Hello and welcome to episode 49 of the Product Biz Podcast. My name is Monica Little and I'm your host, and I'm so excited for today's episode about the secret to using your voice on social media to sell more products with special guest Katherine Beck. So I want to lay the foundation of this super interesting episode with a statistic that says that it takes just 6 seconds for someone to determine if they are going to buy from you or not. People decide that quickly if your products are the ones that they want and need, or if they can simply live without it. And in those 6 seconds, people are subconsciously attracted to you or are holding off simply from your voice. And what we're going to talk about today isn't about the sound of your voice. It's about the way that you speak. It's the way that your own beliefs or fears of judgment show up through the words that you say. And the question I want to ask before we dive into today's episode is, are you attracting customers to your products when you speak about them? When you show up on social media, when you're at markets talking to your customers, when you're pitching your products to other stores? Or are you focusing more on the words that you're saying and the thoughts running through your head about getting it right? Or what will people think? In today's episode, voice and communication coach Katherine Beck shares how to let go of the fear of judgment of showing up on social media and how to attract more sales with your best kept secret and most underutilized tool, your voice. Before we dive in today, let me tell you a little bit more about Katherine. She has over 20 years of experience being the voice of big brands. She's a voiceover artist and voice coach and is the leading authority in how to speak and perform with intention and influence so you can create a greater impact in the world and make more money doing what you love to do. She has over 30 years of performing and public speaking and experience, and she has developed her own unique methodology to voice training that applies to entrepreneurs, actors, broadcast journalists, and podcasters. She is the host of a #1 globally ranked podcast, The Voice of Your Brand, as well as the globally ranked podcast, The All American Actors Podcast. She's the CEO and founder of Launch Your Voice and The All American Voice. This is such an interesting episode about how we show up, how we use our voice, what stories, what limiting beliefs, what fears, what potential judgments are actually showing up through the words that we say, and how we show up with those stories and how to truly overcome them and to use your voice as your new best kept secret. So excited to introduce you to Katherine Beck, and let's dive right in. Well, hello, Miss Katherine. I am so excited to have you today on the Product Biz Podcast to talk all about how to use your voice. And I am just so excited to have you as a guest today.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here.
Oh my gosh. And we were just connecting that you're originally from Chicago and now you're in Australia. So it's just such a small world to know that you're from Chicago. And so many of the people who I know listen to this podcast are also from Chicago. So it's just crazy that you're born and raised in Chicago and now you're living in the wonderful world of Australia, which is just nuts.
It's such a small world, isn't it? Such a small world.
Yes, it totally is.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited that we're going to be talking all about how to use your voice. So I know this is a topic that you are so passionate about, but before we dive into what this really means, I would love to know more and bring everyone up to speed too on what you do. What is a voice coach? Tell us more how you came into this passion and what you really do to help people with using their voice.
Yeah, definitely. I am a voice coach, but it's funny. I was thinking about it this morning, and I'm more so, I am a voice coach, but I'm also a communication coach. And that evolves from my background of being an actor and a voiceover actor for many years. I started as a child. And one of the things that we're trained in acting to do is text analysis. And in identifying what is actually on the page, we're also identifying what's not on the page and that human connection. And when I entered the online space, and I wanted to be more than just an actor, I wanted to share my expertise with others. I started first with actors, and then I wanted more. I wanted to work with people who weren't actors, who I could see in the online space, like me, who were really struggling in finding their way, finding their audience, finding their voice, and truthfully connecting with people in a very unorthodox way. You know, we were born to have a connection one-on-one in person. But as we've evolved, we've got this digital form of communication that oftentimes creates a barrier between us and the people that we're speaking to. Sometimes we can't even see those people speaking to us. They're probably talking back to us and we can't hear it, or they're having a conversation with us in our head. So there's different forms of communication. And I realized that all this work that I've done for myself as an actor, working with other actors on getting ready to do auditions and role preparation, so much of it is about that human connection, that human element. And I thought, my gosh, I've got so much that I'm just dying to share with so many other people that I decided it was time to evolve and work with personal brands, online business owners, anyone who sells a product, program, or service online. So it's been a really interesting evolution of working as a voice coach for actors and now translating that to work with the non-actor to help prepare them for the digital stage.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting what you said of how so much of the world has changed now that we're like on our phones and we're
Mm.
communicating not directly to people. And I feel like that leads to a lot of people maybe not truly knowing how to communicate and not truly knowing because we're always hiding behind a screen. We're always hiding behind a phone. We're always on Zoom, like you and I are chatting right now virtually. So it's so interesting to see how that dynamic has really changed, like as technology evolves and things like that, but also interesting on the people side of how that affects us, right? How we
Yeah.
maybe get less confident to actually show our face because we're so used to being behind the camera, being behind the screen. And I think that phenomenon, like we're in the perfect spot to be having this discussion because it's only going to keep growing and growing the more digital like the world gets, you know? So it's such an awesome place for you and I to be having this discussion today. So I want to know a little bit more as we talk about showing up and truly like using your voice and that connection and that communication that you mentioned. What are some limiting beliefs or thoughts or feelings that people have that really prevent them from showing up authentically? If that does mean, showing your face on social media or talking about your products or really connecting with people in that way, what are some of those limiting beliefs that you notice come up a lot with people?
What doesn't come up?
Yeah. Yeah, very good point.
Right? It's all the major ones, the imposter syndrome, the fear of judgment, the fear of what other people are going to say, the trolls. It brings up all of those things that we've bottled down deep inside now come to the surface quite regularly with this introduction of social media. And now, how do we regulate our bodies and our brains to deal with it and make this part of our business, which it really is an essential part of our business? But how do we handle that for ourselves in a healthy way and still be able to show up? One of the biggest fears that people have is public speaking. But now I think one of the biggest fears that people have is showing up, is
Yeah,
actually just pressing record,
100%.
And so many times I found myself holding back because there was like this block there of, I don't know what to say. Well, where is that coming from? Of course I know what to say, but it's coming from some sort of belief down inside that's telling me, what are other people going to think of me if I say this? How are people going to judge me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if people laugh at me? What if I make a mistake? What if I don't know what to say? What if I stumble my words? What if I say and ah every 5 seconds? All these things are coming from a place of these deep down fears and worries that we've been holding on for so long, but we bottle them deep down inside so we can forget about it. And they get exposed when we put ourselves out on stage. And stage is any sort of stage. It could be in front of a group of people live, but it can also be on a digital platform like Instagram or
Mhm.
TikTok or any of the places. right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love one thing that you said too, just to chime in, is how you talked about like public speaking. Because
Mm,
essentially, I was just talking to some of my members about this, of how they're like nervous to show up on social media and to show their face and to actually be talking about their products. And that's exactly what I said to them. I'm like, it's essentially the skill of public speaking, right? Like if you want to not show up for your business and not show your face, what you're basically saying is like the skill of public speaking is something that you're not open to learning and open to really understanding and becoming better at. I mean, that's something that's so important for a small business owner. And exactly like you said, today's day and age, that's
yeah.
showing up on social media. That's sharing your story, sharing your face, and talking about your products. And I love how you mentioned there's all these different fears of like, I don't know what to say. And what if I mess up? And what if I make a mistake? And there's a lot that you talk about too of how that actually shows up in your voice, right? So, can you
Mm.
talk through maybe some of the examples of someone who's actually maybe in their brain subconsciously thinking some of these things when they do show up on social media? What are some of the maybe things to like look out for, or how does it show up subconsciously in your voice?
Okay, it just jumped. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool.
Did you
All
get my
right.
question?
Yes. So I think
Okay,
what you
cool.
were saying is okay, so how do we distinguish how it's showing up in our voice, right? So I was thinking about that today. And what was coming up for me is there's basically three layers of dialogue. There's the outer layer of dialogue, which is us speaking to other people, whether or not we can hear them speaking back. There's the outer layer that we're actually vocalizing the words that we want to say, right? So, for example, that could be something like, let's say you're selling a product, and you could say, and I don't know, give me a product. What's a product and a price that
Oh,
maybe
okay.
you sell or
So
one of your members sells, or
let's talk about candles, and let's
candles?
say they are $30 for a beautiful candle in a ceramic jar.
Okay, $30. Let's say the person that makes the candles decides they want to increase the price, and it's a price that they're a little bit hesitant about. What would that price be?
Let's say 40.
Okay. So they're increasing the price to 40, and they've got a little bit of uncertainty. And so they might say, and the price of the candle is $40. Okay. So that's the external dialogue. Then there's the inner dialogue. That's the dialogue you can hear in your voice, in your head, but we can't actually hear outside. So inside your head, you might be thinking, should I charge $40? I don't know. Maybe I should just keep it to $30. That was working really well for me. So that's going on in your head. You're aware of that. You can hear the chatter inside your head, but the person outside is hearing, and the candle costs $40. Then there's a third layer, a subconscious dialogue that's happening that you're actually not aware of. And this is the limiting belief. This is the old story that you keep telling yourself, which could be something like, "Nobody, I'm never going to be successful," or "Nobody's going to buy from me," or "Nobody wants what I have to sell," or "I'll always be broke," right? So that's the subconscious dialogue that we don't even know is there. We're not aware of it, but it exists, which is fueling the thoughts and the feelings that are coming up in the inner dialogue, which is saying, should I keep it at $30? I don't know. Oh, $40, I'm not sure, right? And that is orchestrating the voice that comes out when you say, and the candle costs $40. So the listener can hear the nerves or the hesitation that's coming through the thoughts and the feelings through the inner dialogue, which is being orchestrated by the subconscious dialogue. So it's three layers of dialogue.
That is so insightful. And everything is like clicking and making sense to me of like, okay, now I know why I do the things that I do and why I say some of the things. So I love how you said, that determines how your voice comes out.
Mm.
And are there any cues that you see? So for example, for me, I find that I talk really, really fast sometimes where I just want to like get it over with and just say it. And I'm like, I just want to be done with this. Right. But
Yeah.
I know sometimes other people, and I notice this in myself too, even sometimes with a podcast, I'm like taking really deep breaths, like I'm out of breath. So do some
Mm.
of these actual cues in terms of the actions or the words or the sounds or the speed, is that also fueled by some of these subconscious beliefs? And what are some other
Mhm.
ways that they're shown in the actual like 3D when you're speaking?
Yeah, 100%. So pace is definitely one of them. If you're talking fast, you want to get it over and done with. Well, why do you want to get it over and done with? It's coming from someplace. The breath. So let me just check in with you. When you say you're taking these deep breaths, where are the deep breaths coming from? Are they coming in from your lower belly, or are they coming in from the upper chest?
Upper chest for sure, like out
Right?
of breath. Yeah.
So those are shallow breaths. So that's going to support the nerves. When we breathe into the belly, what happens is it's allowing us to breathe from a place of calm. It starts to center us, and you can automatically feel a difference when you're actually breathing as you should, as we naturally breathe. But what happens is those thoughts, those feelings, those things that have happened to us over the years, and they could be like minor things that have happened. Like, for example, you may have gotten up in front of your class to do a speech when you were in high school, and someone said something, could have been the teacher, could have been a friend, somebody in the classroom, and it affected you. And you've held on to that without realizing it. And it's kind of like either put a block on your voice, or it's sort of like held your voice in a period of time. And so, in order to not feel the things that you don't want to feel, judgment, people laughing at you, all of those beliefs we were talking about before, we don't breathe where we should breathe, because if we do, that actually allows emotions to come out to the surface. So instead of allowing ourselves to emote and to feel what we want to feel, we bottle it deep down inside to protect us, to keep us safe. So then we go into the shallow breathing. But then we can hear it. We can notice, like, oh, I feel like I'm out of breath because we're not breathing properly as we should. So it's all connected. So you hear it in your breath. You can notice it in your body as well. You can feel tenseness in your body, holding back. Pace, it could be monotone. It could also be really melodic, It could be a forced energy, a projection of, I really need this sale. I really need it. And so the energy is kind of like shooting out to the other person, and they can sense that as well. It's like, whoa, okay, hold on. It's too much for me. So there's got to be a balance of all the things. And when something is off balance, the listener, so it could be the customer, right? They pick up on that. Again, sort of like the 3 layers of dialogue, it's the same for them as they're receiving it. They may receive it on that more subconscious level and not be aware of it, but they're receiving it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And as you're talking, I'm like, okay, posture. Gotta fix my posture. Okay, gotta breathe in from my belly. I'm like trying to make all these tweaks because this is so interesting. And I truly believe too, exactly like you were saying, that the customer on the other end can pick up on that subconsciously. And you're either pushing them away with your voice, even if you have the best intention, like the candle example, even if you have the best intention with your candle, that your candle is going to help someone to calm down and relax at night and to have like some peace in their home after a crazy day. But subconsciously, if you have those great intentions, but it's coming out from these fears and beliefs of like talking super fast or breathing super shallow, or, like you said, maybe being too aggressive in how you come across it, that can totally shut out the person on the receiving end, even if you're saying the right words, right? Even if you're saying
Correct.
everything that's perfect on why they should buy it and what they need, and it's a hell yes for their life and they want that candle, but that voice, that tone will totally block them off, right?
Exactly. And I think that's a real key factor, is a lot of people in business are thinking about the words that they have to say and they're thinking about their product. That those are, obviously two very important things is how are we going to sell the product and, the messaging behind that to sell it. But what we're forgetting is that we are a personal brand, which means we are also part of that product. And so we are selling all the time. Every time you speak, you're selling. But it's not so much that you're selling the product, you're selling the feeling the product gives you. There's a very big difference. So most people are selling the product. What you want to do is sell the feeling the product gives you.
Yeah. So tell me more about that. Is this kind of the logic versus emotion conversation, or give me a little more context on what you mean by that?
Yeah. So people go online because they want a connection, and people buy from people. They buy from a human connection. What do people want from a human connection? Your customer wants a few things. They want to feel like they're being seen and they're being heard, and that they're being understood, to just take it a little bit further. And they're looking for a person where a lot of us have heard know, like, and trust, right? But what does that mean? What does that mean to the personal brand or the person that has a product? What are they actually looking for? They're looking for somebody who's got an authority or expertise or knowledge that they've got the best product. They're looking for someone who is authentic. And what does that mean, to be authentic? They're looking for someone that they can trust. That's the trust part of the know, like, and trust. They're looking for someone they can trust. So when you show up authentic, you're proving to them, I can trust you. When you're speaking from a place of authority and know-how, expertise, you're showing them that you know. So we've got the know, we've got the trust. And the last part is the like. And that's in being approachable. So allowing there to be a genuine connection, and the most effective way to get there is from speaking with emotion. When we think about people's buying behavior, of course they need the logic, but ultimately when it comes down to deciding to buy the product, they buy from emotion, a feeling that they get to go, if I've got a choice between this person and that person, their product and the other person's product, but I've got a stronger connection with this person because they're creating a connection and a feeling that allows me to feel like I can know, like, and trust them, they're going to choose that person over the other person that might have a great product as well, but they haven't created that emotional connection. And so that comes through every single time you speak. You're selling the feeling because you're taking them on a journey of where they are now to where they want to be. They want a candle, maybe because they're in the dark. They don't have any power. So they need the candle to be in the light. And the way that you explain why this candle, this $40 candle, is the one that's going to create the light, that's going to illuminate their room and create a place for them to have serenity and peace, versus I've got this $40 candle and it's really great and it's long lasting and it's made out of beeswax and you should buy it. Yes. Right? So which one are you going to choose?
Yeah, I love that so much because I talk with my members a lot about showing the emotion through like reels, right? So let's talk about this candle example since we're rolling with it. A lot of my members, I tell them, like, don't just talk about the benefits of the candle. Like you said, what kind of wax it is, the burn time, what the wick is made of. Like, sure, those things are great, but what do your people want to feel in terms of the ambiance? Like, do they want it in their bathroom and like the lights are dim and maybe there's some eucalyptus and a candle is lit, or do they want it on their bedside table, reading a book next to the candle, or whatever it may be, in their kitchen, which with like a fresh scent, whatever that end goal with that candle is. how do we make sure that the reels and the videos are actually portraying that, right? So
Yeah.
emotion through videos. But I love what you said of that emotion and connection, like through your voice and just how you say it.
Yeah.
So how does someone actually bring that emotion out? Because even as I talk about it, I'm like, how does that actually come into fruition?
Yeah, it's well, that's what I teach, and
Yes.
it's revolved around a process of working as an actor for many years, as well as a dialect coach, and really understanding how emotions come through the body, both physically, like I said, through the breath, as we talked about before, but then vocally, as those sounds get formed into words. There's a specific formula that I use in the actual words that we use to create that sense of feeling to connect to the other person. And it goes very granular, very scientific into the consonants and the vowels. So it's really fascinating. We do it automatically all the time. It's just that when we get into this platform and we're selling, we forget, just like the breath. We automatically breathe as we should. We're conditioned for that to be an automatic response that naturally happens. But we change the breath and we do the
Mm.
shallow breathing, which doesn't support how we're naturally supposed to breathe. The same thing happens when we show up on social media and creating these reels and these things, and we need to use our voice. We forget how to do it. We forget how to communicate. We forget how to interact, show up truthfully, authentically, emotionally, because all the other stuff gets in the way.
Mm-hmm. So, as part of that process, just identifying what those limiting beliefs are and really understanding, like, all right, I'm talking really fast because I'm nervous about what I'm going to say. I don't know if it's going to be good. I just want this to get over, and really stopping and acknowledging that and then
Mm.
working through those beliefs and saying, like, hey, I have great stuff to say and it's going to
Yeah.
come out exactly like it should. So, as part of that process, really working through a lot of those stories that we have underneath the surface.
Yeah, that's definitely the first step for me when I work with clients. We identify your old voice story. What is that story that is holding your voice back in time and not allowing your voice to represent who you want to be when you show up as a business owner today? So
Mm-hmm.
we identify what that story is and we replace it with a new voice story. And I give my students what I call a voice declaration, which is a personalized statement that they can say to themselves to feel confident every time they use their voice. For me, it's I have something to say. When I remind myself that I have something to say, it reminds myself that I've got a very powerful message that I am here to share with the world. And if I hold back and I don't use my voice, then that's one less person out there that I wasn't able to serve.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And from there, then we start building your voice brand. So when we think about, our visual brand and we're thinking about, like, let's say for a product, the colors and the font and the packaging you might use for yourself as a personal brand. Again, if we're using our voice and we're showing up, how are we presenting ourselves? What do we want our voice to represent? As we start to create the voice that matches us as a personal brand, what are those characteristics and qualities that we want to vocalize when we want people to hear that represent us? And so we start going from that place and creating
Mm.
that vocal identity for us, that new version of us when we show up and we speak, that is truthful and authentic to us today, not the person that we once were, that is still hiding in the background and afraid to show up.
Yeah, I love hearing you explain this because it just shows how like detailed this is, right? How there's
Mm,
actually a lot of strategy behind your voice. And maybe it's not strategy, maybe it's just uncovering all of the crap that has led us to the voice that we have now. And it's really just uncovering your authentic voice that's underneath all of it and how much conditioning and change and beliefs and scared, feelings we have that led us to the voice that we have now. But what you said earlier was super interesting because I had a similar conversation. I can't even remember who it was with, but it was probably 4 or 5 years ago when I was telling someone about showing up on Instagram, how I was speaking fast. I guess this is
mm.
something that I still do, but I remember this conversation I wish I remembered who it was with, but they asked me like, why are you speaking so fast? And I'm like, well, I just don't know if people care what I have to say. So I want
Mm.
to get it over with. And what they said to me, which was just totally mind blowing, was, well, do you care what you have to say? And I was like, dang, like that's deep. Like, do I care what I have to say? Do I think this is good enough? Do I think this is actually compelling and connecting with people? And I had to do a lot of internal work to be like, yeah, I actually do care what I say. And it's not going to be perfect sometimes. And there's going to be bumps in the road. But I, like you said, like I have a voice, I have a reason for this voice. So that was something that was really eye opening for me. But I love hearing you explain how you work with people in your program to help them with their voice, because this is such an amazing tool that truly can be transformational for a business, to make it something that you're connecting with people easily and they're getting on board with what you're saying, and you're really just resonating and being super authentic with them. And that's a word that I kind of want to dive in with you a little bit more about, being authentic. So do you have any tips or exercises to help people sound more confident when showing up on social media, when selling, how to like be more authentic in the moment? Anything, any advice that you would give?
Yeah, for sure. I think, the first part is really some of the things that we talked about. It's hard to be authentic unless you dive into what's holding you back from being authentic, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there can be a false authenticity. And that's where things start to get pushed and forced, is because we think that we're, showing up authentically and this is what it means to be authentic, but it's much simpler than that. And until we can identify the things that are holding us back from really showing up truthfully as ourselves, it's always going to be sort of this like undercurrent of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's actually holding us back from being authentic. But I think one of the things you can do straight away is make it about them, make it about your audience. It really is about serving them. And the more you make it about them, the easier it becomes to show up, the more confident you feel, because you've taken the pressure off of yourself. It's no longer about you, it's about them.
Yes.
And anytime you find yourself making it about you and you notice yourself going back into that inner dialogue and you hear yourself thinking and you're focusing on what to say, turn it back over to them and let them take care of it for you. Because when we
Mm-hmm.
have a real honest and real and truthful conversation with another person, that's what's happening. We're giving and receiving. We don't know what the other person's going to say. So we don't know how we're going to respond. And oftentimes we get caught up in a trap of, I've got to make this real. This is what I want to say. These are the touch points. Or I'm going to do a webinar and talk about this, that, and the other. Or I'm going to, I've got to stand in the markets and I'm going to sell my candles. And I got to make sure that I say X, Y, and Z, right? So we start thinking about all the logical things again, and we get out of our heart. We get out of that emotional connection that we want with the other person. So one of the things you can do is start just noticing, being aware, am I getting back in my head? Or am I really truthfully connecting to the other person? When you're truthfully connecting to the other person, they will take care of everything. You already know what to say. You've worked it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just got to let them take care of it for you, set it free.
I love the analogy that you said of like selling at a market, because that brought up such a specific example for me of when I used to sell at markets. And there is such a big difference between the first few markets when I was selling and I was like, I need to make my booth fee back, right? I need to
Mm-hmm.
sell X amount of products. Every single person that comes to my stand, to my booth, to my tent, like they need to buy something. And how I would speak to people, I looking back, definitely, I'm sure they could pick up on the neediness in my voice, on like the anticipation, on the fear of not breaking even,
Yeah.
things like that. And I remember there was a point in the market season where I was like, I don't even care about that anymore. Like, I'm going to go, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to have conversations with customers. I'm going to answer their questions. And it's crazy just looking back. This is now just connecting. I knew that the energy was different in terms of my mindset, but now seeing that my voice probably was totally different too. And that's
Yeah.
probably why more people were buying, because it was more of that authentic connection. And it's not this neediness or this, am I going to make my booth feedback? And instead, it's what do my people want to know? Like, what questions do they have? How can I serve them? How can I make sure if it's a yes or a no, they're making the right decision based on the products that I'm selling? So I
Yeah.
love to hear you say that. And another thing I want to mention too, that you said, don't make it about you. Because I was just having a conversation with one of my members about Instagram. And I know she listens to the podcast, so she's going to hear this, but she was saying that she doesn't like to write really long captions because that's
Mm.
just not, what she likes to read. And I was telling her the same thing. I'm like, well, when you have your Instagram, it's about the customer, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you don't like to read long captions, but maybe that person who's going to buy, let's say candle again, who's going to buy your candle, who's going to love the candle, who's going to feel this peace and joy and just, some calm and relaxation at the end of the day, maybe they need those more details in their caption to actually make the purchase. And then their night is going to be so much better once they have it, right? So
Yeah.
I love how you said, take yourself out of it, both from removing the pressure, but also from just putting the customer first on what do they truly need to make that decision to have your product and however it's going to help them.
Yeah, and I might add one thing to that with the content creation, because I know a lot of people, and I'm one of them, and I think that's why I do what I do, is I was always a very shy, introverted girl growing up. I was very quiet, and so that I think that's why I became an actor. Many actors do, is because we'd much rather be other characters, and that's our way to express ourselves than actually showing up as our true self. We find that very daunting and scary. So when I became a personal brand, online business owner, and I had to show up on social media, even to this day, I still find it a struggle. I don't find it easy. And the way that I've been able to get through it, knowing that I need to create content for my business to connect and to, find new traffic and new leads and all those things, is to find it in a way to speak to my audience and say what they need to hear. So I'm still serving them, and I'm serving what I know that they need to hear, but I'm doing it in a way that makes me feel good. Because there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different ways that you can show up and create content online. You can have a podcast, you can have a YouTube channel, you could do Instagram Reels and TikTok Reels, you could do carousels, you could just do Facebook ads. There's so many different ways that you can create content. What it came down to for me was recognizing I don't have to do all the things. And I also don't have to do the things that don't make me feel good. So, how can I use my voice, and how can I show up and serve others and create content that will serve them in a way that inspires me and lights me up and feels aligned with me? And so, for me, I've created things that are I call them voice-spirations, which are little voice memos. And what I do now is I will get on my phone, and the thoughts that come in my head, like little downloads, I'll just record, and then I'll edit it. I'll cut it to a visual that's got just very simple text, maybe captions, a little bit of motion. I could use B-roll. It's not me showing up because I don't like to be on camera all the time. I'm a voiceover artist. I like to use my voice, right? And I found that was a really creative way for me to create content in a way that feels good to me, but is having an impact with others. And what I noticed is when I started making that shift, creating content that really worked for me instead of trying to put myself into a box of what everyone else was saying to create for content, I noticed more shares, more
Mm-hmm.
follows, more interest. But when I wasn't
Yes.
doing that and I was trying to do what other people were telling me to do, it didn't resonate the same. And I look back at those videos and I can see and I can hear, as we're talking about, someone who wasn't comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
therefore
Yeah.
wasn't really fully connecting with their audience.
Yeah. I think that goes to like that balance, right? Of
Mm-hmm.
what does the customer need and what actually lights you up, and finding that middle ground to actually bring that to life. And I love what you just said. And with the client example that I gave too, what I mentioned to her is your reels are where you can be super concise, where you like to be super
Yeah.
concise, right? Because you can't
Yeah.
have a lot of text in the actual reel. It's just a couple lines. But there's your balance right there of being super
Exactly.
concise and what you really like, but maybe adding a few more sentences in the caption for the people who may need that too.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like best of both worlds, really finding that middle ground of what makes you happy and what excites you, but also making sure that the customer is served with the information that they have too, which I think coincides with what you said perfectly as well,
exactly.
which I love it. One other thing that I wanted to ask you. So we talked about, these limiting beliefs and these stories that change basically our voice and how we connect with people and how we want to really acknowledge them. What are some ways that people can actually find those stories? Is it, record yourself speaking and play it back and watch to see what you notice and then maybe think through, what is causing that? Or is it something different? Like, how do people actually get to the underlying stories that are maybe changing how they show up with their voice?
It's so interesting. So when I work with someone, whether one-on-one or in my program, that's one of the first things we do is identify your voice story. And so often it's like this story that you think doesn't really is like no big deal. Like it's not this like catastrophic event. It's this, it could be like a beauty pageant or a spelling bee or just one day you were in class and the teacher said something to you. Like it could be the simplest thing that you just wouldn't even think about. So, what's that first story that comes to mind? A moment in time where you felt some sort of hesitation or doubt or didn't feel good about using your voice. Think about just that first thing that pops into your head and write it down. And just write down everything that comes to mind. Anything you hear anyone else say, like did the teacher say something? What did they say? And even if it's not word for word, whatever comes up, just write it down. And that's going to give you clues into those limiting beliefs that are holding you back still today from that story. And that one story, we can find something and we can reframe it in a way to now serve you so that you're rewriting your voice story to the voice that you want to have today. And that's where we start to pull apart and find that voice declaration for you, which you can kind of think like an affirmation, something that you see or something that you say out loud or even say in your head before you get up to do an Instagram reel or you go to sell, to give you that confirmation that you have the confidence and you have the right to speak and you know exactly what to say and you know others want to hear it and that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think there's so much power in that and really uncovering it. And this has just been a very eye-opening conversation for me too, as I'm listening to you speak and taking all the tips that you said. So I know the person listening right now is also going to have some awesome takeaways and just understanding how important and powerful our voice is, but maybe more so just like I was mentioning earlier. So my main takeaways from while you're speaking is just getting back to ourselves and not being afraid of showing up authentically and not being afraid of what we have to say. And especially as we have products too that we sell, not to be afraid of talking about how great they are and what benefits they have for people too. So thank you so much for such an awesome conversation. Before we wrap up and let people know where they can find you and your programs and all that amazing stuff, I just wanted to end with one final question. If there's anything else you wanted to share, any tips about voice, any tips about selling, any other main just pieces of insight that you have, I wanted to open it up in case you have anything else to end with.
Oh gosh, we
I
covered
know,
so
put you on
much.
the spot, put you on the spot.
Well, you know, follow that voice that's connected to your heart. That voice will always know what to say and the right way to say it. And let the other person take care of it for you, whether you can see them in the room, in the Zoom room, on the computer screen, or not. You can't see them. If you're talking to a group on Instagram Live, for example, connect to your heart, and that will connect to your voice and deliver your message in the way it needs to be said.
So beautiful. Mic drop right there. Thank you so much, Katherine. I would love for you to share where people can find you. Tell us more about where you are on Instagram, your website, your program, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So my website is my name, katherinebeck.com. You can find me on Instagram, which is at Katherine_Beck_. Same on TikTok. And I've got a program called Launch Your Voice, which helps you make a voice transformation, which really does transform not just your business, but as you can hear, your life as well. So feel free to reach out.
Oh my gosh, amazing. I'll be sure to link all of that in the show notes so people can easily find you and learn more about it. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. This was such a great episode. You have so much knowledge on this topic, and I'm just so honored to have you here sharing your expertise. So thank you so much for being a guest this week on the Product Biz podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.